Have you ever met someone, and from the very first moment it felt like the universe was holding its breath? A single glance, and something inside you shifts. Time slows down. The noise of the world fades, and in their presence, you feel both completely alive and completely undone. It's not logical. It doesn't make sense on paper. But something about them calls to you, not from the mind, but from the soul. It feels like recognition, as if you've known them long before you met, as if they've appeared to remind you of something you've forgotten. They awaken something ancient within you, a longing you can't quite name, a feeling of coming home and being thrown into chaos at the same time. And deep down, you know, this connection isn't ordinary. It's magnetic. It's fated. It's alive with something bigger than you can control. Carl Jung believed that the people who captivate us the most aren't here to complete us. They're here to reveal us. We don't just fall in love with another person. We fall in love with the part of ourselves that we see reflected in their eyes. What feels like destiny is often the meeting between our conscious mind and our unconscious longing. What feels like chemistry is often recognition, a reunion of energies within the soul projected outward through another being. That's why we fall for our opposite, because the psyche is always searching for balance. If you've lived your life contained, you'll be drawn to freedom. If you've spent your life giving, you'll be magnetized by someone who takes. If you've hidden your emotions, you'll fall for the one who wears their heart on fire. The attraction feels irresistible, not because they complete you, but because they carry what you have lost. Through them, your unconscious whispers, "This is what you've forgotten you are." Jung called this the projection of the shadow, the moment when the unexpressed parts of our psyche come alive in another person. We are not simply seeing them. We are seeing our hidden self dressed in their form. That's why love feels like fire. It warms you. It awakens you. But it can also burn away everything false. Because love is not only meant to comfort you, it is meant to make you conscious. What we call falling in love is often the soul recognizing itself through another. It's not random, and it's not accidental. It's the intelligence of the unconscious, drawing us toward the person who holds the key to the part of us we've forgotten. Carl Jung believed that each of us lives in two worlds, the world we know and the world we deny. The known world is what we call our personality, the face we show to others, the stories we tell ourselves about who we are. But behind that lies a vast unseen territory, the world of the shadow. The shadow holds everything we've repressed, everything we've been ashamed of, everything we once were, but had to hide in order to be loved, accepted, or safe. Maybe as a child your sensitivity was too much, so you learned to be strong. Maybe your independence was punished, so you learned to please. Maybe your voice was silenced, so you learned to disappear. But nothing we push away is ever truly gone. It waits beneath the surface, in the unconscious longing to return to the light. And the strange, poetic way the soul brings it back is through love. You meet someone whose presence awakens that buried part. Someone who carries what you've lost. Someone whose freedom, or passion, or power pulls at something deep within you. You say, "They make me feel alive." But what's really happening is that they make you feel your own aliveness again. They embody your forgotten qualities, your repressed vitality, your hidden strength, your unclaimed confidence, and so you fall for them, not because they are your other half, but because they are your reflection. Jung called this projection dash, the process of placing what is unconscious within ourselves onto another person. It's how the psyche seeks integration. You're not just attracted to them for who they are. You're attracted to them for what they represent. They are the mirror through which you begin to see your own shadow, your own potential, your own divine polarity. That's why opposites attract, because the psyche is always reaching for balance. The cold is drawn to warmth, the controlled is drawn to chaos, the detached is drawn to depth. And in that tension, consciousness expands. But projection is fragile. It is, by nature, temporary, because no human being can carry the weight of another person's unconscious forever. Eventually, the illusion begins to crack. The image you've fallen in love with starts to dissolve, and the real person begins to emerge. They no longer fit the fantasy you've created. And this is where most love stories start to unravel, because the moment the mirror begins to clear, the ego begins to panic. You start asking, what happened? Why have they changed? Where did the magic go? But the truth is, they didn't change. Your perception did. You stopped seeing them through the veil of your own projection. And now, for the first time, you are meeting them and yourself as you really are. Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Love is how the unconscious directs us. It sends us toward the people who will make us conscious, even if it hurts, because love isn't meant to be a fairy tale. It's an initiation, a sacred fire that illuminates not only the beauty in another, but the darkness within ourselves. That's why it feels so consuming, so divine, so dangerous, because it's not just the meeting of two hearts, it's the collision of two psyches, each carrying their own heavens and hells. When two people fall in love, it's never just chemistry, it's alchemy, a process of transformation in which everything unhealed within you is brought to the surface through the mirror of the other. At first, everything felt alive. The world was brighter, your heart more open, your body more awake. But slowly, something begins to shift. The same qualities that once drew you in now start to disturb your peace. Their freedom feels careless. Their strength feels controlling. Their calm feels cold. Their mystery feels distant. And the dream you once built together begins to crack under the weight of reality. You start asking yourself, what happened? Why does it feel so different now? The answer is painful, but simple. The projection is fading. The person in front of you is no longer the ideal. you created from your own unconscious longing. They are human now, flawed, complex, imperfect, and so are you. This is the moment when love stops being a fantasy and becomes a mirror. A mirror that reflects not what you want to see, but what you need to see. All the unhealed wounds within you, the fear of rejection, the need to be chosen, the hunger for control, the terror of loss. They begin to rise from the depths, and the person you love becomes the stage upon which your inner world is revealed. This is where many relationships end, because the mind confuses the end of the projection with the end of love itself. But what if this breaking point isn't the end, but the beginning of something deeper? Jung saw this moment as sacred, a threshold between illusion and truth. Because when the mirror breaks, you finally stop seeing the other as the source of your happiness and begin to recognize them as your greatest teacher. Every trigger, every argument, every misunderstanding is the psyche's way of saying, "Look here, this is where you are still asleep." You accuse them of being distant, but maybe it's you who abandoned your own emotions long ago. You say they don't listen, but perhaps you've silenced the voice within yourself. You feel they make you small, but maybe it's you who's afraid to stand in your full power. We think we are fighting with our partner, but often we are wrestling with our own shadow. Love becomes a mirror of consciousness. It shows us everything we've denied and asks us to choose awareness over reaction. That's why love feels so hard, because every time we try to control or fix the other, life brings us back to the same truth. The only person you can ever transform is yourself. This is the initiation, the alchemy of love. Two egos colliding, two souls awakening, each reflecting the other's unseen depths. It's not gentle work. It's the sacred fire that burns through illusion until only truth remains. And truth is rarely comfortable. It's raw, it's humbling. It shows you everything you've tried to hide, your jealousy, your pride, your fear of being unloved. But it also shows you something else, your capacity to grow. Your ability to stay present in discomfort, your willingness to love even when love isn't easy. Because real love isn't about comfort, it's about consciousness. It's the decision to stay awake, even when your old patterns beg you to fall asleep again. This is what Jung meant when he said that relationships are laboratories of the soul. They are not meant to make us happy. They are meant to make us whole. When the fire of love has burned through illusion, what remains is something quieter, but infinitely more real. The projection has shattered, the fantasy is gone, and all that's left is two souls, standing in the soft light of truth. You see them now, not as a savior, not as a story, but as a human being, flawed, complex, sacred. And in that recognition, something inside you softens, because this is where real love begins, not in perfection, but in presence, not in endless passion, but in the gentle willingness to stay awake together. Love that survives the breaking of the mirror. is love that has learned to see. It no longer clings to fantasy. It embraces reality. It no longer asks, "What can I get from you?" but, "What can we discover through each other?" When you stop demanding that your partner carry your light, you begin to see your own. When you stop blaming them for your pain, you begin to touch your own wounds with tenderness. And when you stop trying to control love, you begin to understand what love actually is. A state of awareness, not possession. You begin to realize that love was never about finding someone who completes you. It was about remembering the parts of yourself you once gave away. The confident one who hides behind humility. The wild one who was told to behave. The sensitive one who learned to be strong. The intuitive one who stopped trusting her voice. Love brings them all home. Piece by piece, heartbreak by heartbreak, you begin to gather yourself again. And in that gathering, something miraculous happens. You become whole. You no longer fall in love to fill a void. You fall in love because your soul wants to expand. You no longer choose from fear of being alone. You choose from the joy of sharing freedom. And that changes everything. Love stops being a transaction and becomes a transformation. It stops being a hunger and becomes a prayer. It stops being an escape from yourself and becomes a return to yourself. You begin to understand that true love doesn't cage you. It frees you. It doesn't rescue you. It reveals you. It doesn't complete you. It calls you to completeness within. Jung called this the union of opposites, the sacred marriage between the conscious and the unconscious, the masculine and the feminine, the inner and the outer. When this happens inside you, something profound awakens. You start to see that the person you thought you needed was actually the mirror that helped you remember who you already are. The longing that once felt like loss was actually your soul calling you home. And slowly, your love becomes quieter. It becomes rooted. It becomes steady, like a flame that no longer flickers in every wind. You start to love differently. You stop trying to hold the other person in your hands and begin to hold them in your heart. You stop fearing distance because you know that connection doesn't depend on proximity. You stop needing constant reassurance because you can finally feel safe inside yourself. You begin to live from a new center, not the ego that grasps, but the soul that trusts. And from that place, love becomes devotion, not the kind that clings, but the kind that blesses, the kind that says, "I honor your path, even when it leads away from mine," the kind that lets the other be free. Because you finally understand that love is never lost. Even when it changes form, even when it ends, it leaves you more awake than before. Because every person you've ever loved has been a chapter in the book of your becoming. Some entered to heal you, some to break you open, some to teach you how to stand alone, but all of them, everyone, brought you closer to yourself. That is the purpose of love. Not to make life easier, but to make it real. not to protect you from pain, but to teach you how to stay open in the midst of it. Not to complete you, but to awaken you. And maybe that's what it truly means. To fall for your opposite, because what you're really falling into is the other side of your own soul. The place where what you fear meets what you long for. The place where wholeness begins. So the next time someone enters your life and stirs something wild inside, you don't rush to define it. Don't try to control it. Just watch. Listen. Feel what it reveals. Because the greatest teachers don't always stay. Some appear only long enough to show you your own reflection and then disappear, leaving you changed forever. And when they do, thank them. Because through them, you have met yourself. Through them, you've touched the divine architecture of your own heart. And through them, you've remembered that love, in its purest form, is not a story between two people, but the meeting of the soul with itself. And if this spoke to you, if something inside you recognized these words as truth, then I invite you to stay connected. Subscribe to Soul of the Mind and continue this journey with me into the depth of psychology, the language of the soul, and the unseen forces that guide our becoming. Because this isn't just a channel, it's a space for awakening. And this is only the beginning.